Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Speak Uneasy, a horror, attraction and culture podcast. First of all, the more avid listeners amongst you might notice that I sound a little bit more, corpsey than normal. I'd just like to take a moment to apologise for the delay in this episode. As you may have already been able to gather, I've been down with a bit of a cold. And as I knew that I wanted to do the Best of Halloween 2022 season episode, I figured I'd give it a couple of days and unfortunately make you wait, but then at least not subject you to an hour of me coughing and sniffling into a microphone. I figured this was probably the best middle ground I could do. So I've spent basically the last 8 days drowning myself in warm squash, or cordial if you're an international listener, and trying to get myself back into some sort of shape to be able to record this episode finally. 2022 has been such an amazing season for scare events, so I wanted to run down, not really an awards, that sounds a bit too prestigious, I don't think we're anywhere really near that yet, but certainly a few shout-outs. And to make it palatable, we've done those shout-outs in the forms of runner-up and winner, which sounds like awards, but it's not awards, don't make it a thing. So we're going to discuss some of the highlights of the 2022 season. And again, before we get into this, these are just my opinion. My words are not gospel. These are just ones that I particularly wanted to shout out, and to be honest, if I was to cover absolutely every single maze, attraction, scare zone, actor that I wanted to in this episode, I think we may actually be here until the doors open next year. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't mention your favourite, or even leave out some of my favourites. I've got to be honest, there's a few that I really would have liked to have been able to further highlight. But again, there is a limit on how much of your time it's respectful to ask for. So again, I always appreciate those listeners. In fact, on the subject of listeners, thank you very much. We've just surpassed our first 100 listens here on the Speak Uneasy. And we've actually received some great feedback, and some people have reached out to say what they like and what they don't like, which is massively helpful, so I really do appreciate that. If you've not yet hit the subscribe button on the platform that you're currently listening to us, why not do it now? Every follow, every subscribe really helps us. And if you've not taken the time yet to say hello on Instagram, Twitter, emailing the speakuneasypod@aol.com, feel free to do that. It's always great for us to hear feedback. If we could possibly leave out quite how rough I sound, I'd really appreciate that. So with that being said, let's move on to the Speak Uneasy's Best of Halloween Season 2022. The categories we're going to be running through are Best Scare Zone, Best Roaming Team, Best Entertainment, Best Hub/Food and Drink Area, Best Merchandise, Best Use of Lighting in a Maze, Best Sound Design, Best Use of Smell, Best Out-of-the-Box Element, Best Overall Visuals in a Maze, Best Comedy/Laughs, Best Clown Team, Best Chainsaw Team, Best Finale, Best Alternative Experience, the event that we believe is one to watch, Best Theme Park Event, and Best Non-Theme Park Event. And then to finish it off, we'll also have Best Multi-Zone Maze and our Best Maze of 2022. Our first category this evening is Best Scare Zone. This is a relatively small category, as scare zones aren't as present as perhaps we'd like to see them. As I said before, there'll be a runner-up and winner in most categories. Sometimes I'll like to do a special mention, and this is one of those instances. My special mention goes to Scarcity from Park and Party. Scarcity basically functions as majorly one extended scare zone, so it didn't seem entirely fair to put the entirety of Scarcity against what is a much smaller experience. But I did want to say, Scarcity, for the experience that it's trying to offer you, is incredibly well done, and I think for a lot of people it's a very nice introduction to scares. The fact that there's a midway bar to kind of relax and have a bit of a chill out and a dance to some incredibly cringy 80s music, which that is not said as a criticism at all. That is exactly what this should be in the middle. It's perfect for who they're aiming the event at. Also, there may in fact be audio proof of me singing along to I Want to Dance with Somebody at Scare City, so maybe that will make its way out into the wider world at some point. But again, I don't believe it's fair to put the entirety of that event up against a smaller experience. So our runner-up for Best Scare Zone is actually the new for 2022 Scare Zone from Thorpe Park, Death's Doors. I thought this was a really fun and interesting idea. It's basically Trick or Treat on a really tight, smartly designed zone where workers can have multiple doors to answer and respond to, which gives you a really efficient use of scare actors and a real nice sense of play. One of the things that I enjoy about scare attractions is that we aren't allowed to just simply sit back. We can't be passive. When we're watching a horror film, we allow it to just kind of roll in front of us. With scare zones, scare mazes, scare attractions in general, we have to have agency. I love anything that forces the person to participate, and the simple act of knocking on those doors gave a great sense of agency. It also makes for some really fun interactions, and there are all sorts behind those doors, from 50s housewives, which weirdly got the biggest scream I heard in the entire time I was there, through to spooky ghosts, to clowns, to there's a little bit of everything behind those doors, and I think it's a really fun and inventive use of space in a scare attraction. So that was a great scare zone. For our winner of Best Scare Zone, we actually stay at Thorpe Park. My personal favourite scare zone of 2022 was the Crows of Merkin Meadow. This scare zone had a good length, it was beautifully atmospheric, the costume designs were great, and it does exactly what a scare zone should do. A scare zone is designed to be less intense and give people a chance to dip their toes into the world of scares without having to commit to, say, a maze ticket. I love the fact that the scare zone started with an intro actor trying to give you a very quick and brief heads up as to the story, as to why the crows are the way they are. And it's a simple, straightforward premise. Something has befallen the town, in this case a curse, and that you are warned not to go in there for fear of your own safety. Super simple setup, delivered very quickly, very efficiently and very well. That means as you're walking through Merkin Meadow, you know the story. You have a sense of importance to what the things that you're seeing and experiencing. And I think, again, referring back to the fact that scare zones are a nice way to onboard people into the world of scares, giving someone a quick and understandable story is really pivotal to a scare zone. And I think that the Crows of Merkin Meadow did that incredibly well. Again, you mix that with the incredible ambience, the great use of lighting, the fantastic costumes, and again, a suitable length. It is just a very good scare zone. As we move through our highlights of the 2022 season, we're going to be looking at a lot of the things that are external to the mazes themselves. Obviously, we get to the mazes because that's your big ticket item, that's why you show up to the events. But I really do think it's important to highlight all the things that make an event, things around the mazes. So with that being said, we're going to look at Best Roaming Team. This is another one of those categories where we'll be doing a runner-up and a winner. But before that, I again want to do a special mention. My special mention this year goes to Terror Mountain. Their roaming team, although small in numbers, were massive in impact. I never felt like I could see any downtime from that team. As you may have heard from the Terror Mountain episode that we did, one of the compliments that I gave them is that I never saw them slip out of character. Even if there wasn't really anyone around in eyeline to tell them to stay in character, they never really shifted. The body movement stayed the same, the dedication to being that character was always there. You mix that with some really fun and interesting interactions, and that just makes a great roaming team. They had great attention to the queue lines as we were walking in, and again, like I say, they never felt like they were off the clock. So for that, I definitely want to shout out Terror Mountain. Your roaming team are fantastic, and I hope that you bring them back again for next year's event. And again, I can't stress this, Terror Mountain narrowly missed being a runner-up or a winner here. The runner-up for Best Roaming Team goes to Xtreme Scream. Xtreme Scream's roaming team were fantastic. Great variety of characters out there, ranging from creepy bunnies to butcher-style characters, to even actors on their way to mazes would briefly be the roaming team. A very strong set of clown roamers there as well. Their ability to push genuine scares whilst roaming was very impressive. I was stood in a designated smoking area and found myself jumping a mile when I heard the sort of cattle prod taser sound going off near me, only to find myself face to face with a pig-faced butcher. These little moments really help you keep tension and keep that feeling of anticipation for the mazes that you're going to go into, and I think Xtreme Scream's roaming team really understand that. Constantly prevalent, constantly around, but never overstepping that mark where the people who needed a rest weren't going to get one. Really, really well-paced roamers and a great variety of costumes and interactions throughout. So Xtreme Scream for me takes the runner-up for Best Roaming Team 2022. However, the winner of Best Roaming Team 2022, hands down, undoubtedly goes to Farmageddon. Farmageddon's roaming team have a blend from the genuinely horrific, where you'll find yourself looking at them wondering how many teeth can one thing have, right the way through to some very funny and interesting and slightly risque interactions. And I think the reason for me that they win Best Roaming Team is simply put that they understood the assignment. There were characters that were designed to make you jump, there were characters that were designed to make you laugh, and there were characters that were designed to make you do both. And every single roaming actor was consistently in character, consistently having fun. Again, very little downtime. We spent quite a lot of the time with the roamers at Farmageddon. They were more than happy to work rooms, work smoking areas. They were constantly present and constantly looking to have those interactions and build on that festival atmosphere that Farmageddon does so well. You twin great actors with great costumes. This is obviously going to be a winner. Again, Xtreme Scream and Farmageddon both had fantastic roaming teams, but for me, Farmageddon wins purely by having the ability to make me hold my sides laughing and catch me off guard a few times as well. As you may have heard on the last few episodes, for me it's so important to mix fear and laughter because they're so closely twinned anyway, and laughter can disarm you ready for that next big scare. So for me, Farmageddon 2022, hands down, best roaming team. Our next category is Best Entertainment. The runner-up for Best Entertainment goes to Screamfest in Burton-on-Trent. If you've already listened to the Burton-on-Trent Screamfest episode, you'll already know a little bit about the entertainment there. It was a great mix of fun, freak show style elements, mixed with comedy and a variety of live bands as well. I think they did a really good job of keeping an entertainment schedule that was engaging, and I think that fits very, very well with the Screamfest mentality. Again, it has that sort of festival feel to it. And I think that's something that the entertainment helped cultivate at Screamfest. Again, entertainment is going to be such a subjective thing. Some people are going to love listening to loud rock bands. Some people are going to want more comedy elements or more sideshow, freak show elements. Some people are not going to want any of that, and they're going to want to see a dance troupe. For me, personally, I don't mind what the entertainment is. I like a little bit of everything. Yes, I love it when a band plays, but I'm also just as engaged if I'm watching a dance troupe that have really tight choreography or a stage show that's designed to be funny. And I think sometimes we as scare events occasionally fall into a trap of being a little too on the nose with our selection of entertainment. Horror equals metal. And that's kind of true. There is still a line there to be drawn between the number of people who enjoy rock and metal and the people who enjoy horror. Those two subcultures have always been closely linked. But for me, the winner of Best Entertainment goes to Thorpe Park. Just for the sheer variety of stuff that was on. I thought the Amityville dance troupe were very, very good. The Legacy Fire and Laser Show were very, very impressive. There really was just a little bit of everything for everyone, and I felt that helped remove the barrier to entry to the event itself. It is worth noting again, there will be some categories where theme parks and scream parks are in fact compared. Typically I'll try not to do that because, again, we're talking about independent events versus a multi-million pound theme park. It's not entirely a fair comparison, but I think in this instance it is one of the ones where it's slightly more fair. Next we move on to another element that's so important in building a true event, which is the best hub area or food and drink area. For me, the runner-up in this category is Dr. Frights Halloween Nights. The food/hub area feels very much like a festival marquee. You are met with a white marquee that houses the central hub area, including food and drink, a bar, merchandise, and a series of just general curiosities that I think gives the place a very nice DIY horror fan fanatic feel. And off that central hub, the 4 mazes are always close by. The thing with Dr. Frights is that the hub felt very alive. There was always a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. It never felt ruckus, but it certainly had energy. You're not going to get your scares in the hub area. It's not one of those places that you find yourself thinking, is this going to kick off? There's no ill will in that hub area, but I will say it's very energetic, and that's really pleasant. And I think that really goes hand in hand with that sort of classic DIY festival feel. Like, you wouldn't feel out of place if the scare mazes were replaced with like 7 or 8 good local-ish bands. I don't want to make it sound like I don't want to short sell it, but it's definitely got that DIY rock festival feel. The winner of Best Hub Area goes to Xtreme Scream. The hub area for Xtreme Scream is beautiful. There are flame cannons that surround the central hub. There are food vendors, there are fire dancers, there are flame pits to stay by and keep warm. In the UK, at the tail end of October, it gets kind of chilly, and Xtreme Scream offers you a great place to recharge, reset, have a laugh with your friends, have a drink in what is honestly kind of breathtakingly beautiful area. Again, the flame cannons, the fire pits, it just cultivates this feeling of like grandeur and yet a calming, relaxing area. That's not to say that this is devoid of energy, because again, it is not. It very much holds a similar feel to Dr. Frights, in as much as that there is that constant laughter and energy there. And that for me is so pivotal to a good hub area, is to have a space and a zone that allows you to cultivate laughter and discussion. At the end of the day, you collect your best friends, your nearest and dearest, your loved ones, your partner, your colleagues, whatever it is, whoever it is that you go with at these events, and you share an experience. So to me, the hub area is so vital because it gives you an opportunity to further embed the fact that you had a shared experience. Did your friend get caught out? Did you get caught out? Whoever it is that jumped a mile, it's your turn to have a little bit of light ribbing and a few chuckles at your expense, knowing that the next maze will be somebody else. And I really like that feeling. I love that feeling of being able to share and enjoy something together with my party. And a good hub area just really cements the ability to do that. So it's more important than perhaps you may think. So once again, the winner of Best Hub 2022 goes to Xtreme Scream. The last of the out of maze elements that I wanted to do a shout out to was Best Merchandise. As you may have heard me mention in the Screamfest episode, merchandise takes an event and gives it a level of prestige. The more that you see and hear a name, the more prestige that it has. And we as fanatics enjoy showing what we've enjoyed, be it through the medium of a t-shirt, a hat, whatever it might be. And I think it's something that I would personally like to try and highlight the importance of. I personally am happy to take out my wallet, set the butterflies free, and spend my last few pounds on a piece of merchandise or a memento for an event. So the runner-up for Best Merchandise actually goes to Screamfest. They had a great array of merchandise ranging from hoodies to t-shirts to bucket hats, all of which were branded with that Screamfest logo. The quality of the merchandise seems very good as well. It's embroidered, which is really, really nice. And again, just a good selection of things that have that core Screamfest logo. So that's very much appreciated. The winner of Best Merchandise actually goes to Dr. Frights Halloween Nights. We are talking 2 very distinct, very cool looking t-shirts, hot sauces, key rings, postcards, you name it, you could buy it. And again, the quality of merchandise was very, very good. And to break the illusion that I am just a floating voice out there in the ether, I'm actually currently wearing my Dr. Frights clown t-shirt right now, so there's a little behind the scenes for you. Again, it might seem like a pointless thing to highlight, but I do think the inclusion of merchandise in an event adds that level of prestige. And if we can add that level of prestige to our events, it means we elevate the industry as a whole. So for me, it is actually very important. And as a fan, I like getting cool t-shirts, or hats, or hoodies, or jackets, or honestly, you can pretty much put a logo on anything and I'll consider buying it. So that wraps up the things that are outside of mazes. So now we're going to move into the kind of main event. There are so many different things that make a great scare maze. It can be actors, it can be sets, it can be maze layout designs, it can be elevation changes, it can be a smell, a lighting effect, it can be something so off the wall that you hadn't even considered it would be a thing. With that in mind, I want to try and highlight some of those cool moments, some of those little things that make a great effect. And we start with best use of a lighting effect in a maze. Runner-up, Dr. Frights' Halloween Nights, House of Wax. House of Wax is a wonderfully creepy maze throughout, delivers consistently great scares, and constantly remains in a tense space. One of the most visually impressive and tense moments of the maze is a single corridor. At the end of the corridor, there is a woman. She is framed by the corridor itself. The lighting effect is a simple on-off. As the light comes on for the first time, she's there. As the light goes off, you are plunged into darkness expecting to see the woman again. As the light comes back on, she's gone. This is such a simple and effective use of a basic lighting trick, and this is 100% the sort of thing that we want to highlight in these roundups. Things that just make a special moment for the simple use of an on-off light at a slow, regular pace, subverting your expectations and allowing actors to move cleverly in different lighting situations, presents itself as one of A, the most visually impressive, and B, most tense moments of what is a genuinely unnerving maze. So for that, Dr. Frights, all I can do is applaud. The winner of best use of lighting effect in a maze, we return back to Xtreme Scream for Hoodoo Voodoo, The Swamp. The Swamp is a lighting effect that is used throughout multiple mazes. In fact, by simply saying The Swamp, you'll probably already have an idea of what I mean. It is a room half filled with smoke with a green laser that sits across the top of the smoke to create an eerie swamp feel. In terms of the lighting effect itself, this award could have gone to multiple mazes this year alone. However, the set that sits around the laser swamp and the actor's ability to use that space, resisting the urge to do a simple jump scare, and instead allow themselves to become part of some sort of macabre dance, constantly building suspense, teasing a limb above the swamp to then bring it down slowly, and to have these eerie, slow movements, really took that lighting effect and showed it in its best light. So for that, Hoodoo Voodoo's Laser Swamp wins best lighting effect in a maze this year. There are so many things that can take a good maze to become a great maze, and typically you'll find that great mazes stimulate all of your senses. So our next category is best use of smell in a maze. Our runner-up for best use of smell goes to Darkest Depths at Alton Towers Resort. Darkest Depths has you moving through the bowels of a pirate ship during a mutiny. Everything that you would come to expect from this is there. You have the smell of dark and dank wood. You have the smell of the sea, a stomach-turning scent of vomit from the poor crewmates who can no longer keep their lunch down. There is a real eclectic set of smells within this maze that do a fantastic job of further onboarding you to become part of that world. Every single section of that maze is just elevated by the fact that not only are you visually stimulated, but you are nasally stimulated, aromically stimulated. I'm sure someone will give me the correct term there, but your sense of smell is also stimulated, and it just takes what is a fantastic maze and really underpins all of the elements that you're experiencing to make it a great maze. Thankfully, I've never been on a pirate ship that's been cursed to crash by hearing the songs of sirens, but if I had, I imagine it would smell like that. The winner of best use of smell within a scare maze, we once again return to Xtreme Scream for the Pie Factory. The Pie Factory story is simple. The pigs have decided that they are taking over the factory, and it's you that will be the pie. So you go throughout the sections of the mazes being processed to be turned into a pie. And the use of smell in this maze is stellar. It would have been really easy for them to have got one blanket scent that smells a bit like meat and just had it run through the maze. and I don't think anyone would have batted an eyelid or a nostril. However, Xtreme Scream use multiple different smell pods for the multiple different parts of the processing. There is a section where you are in a butcher's and it smells like a butcher's. The bit where you are in the processing plant, it smells more raw and fresh meat. When you are moving through, there are so many different scents and smells that underpin the process that you are going through. Some of these scents are truly stomach turning, even to a meat eater, and they really build a sense of tension and anticipation. As you enter into a room, you are taken aback with this, oh god, what is going to happen to me? And I think for a maze like the Pie Factory, that repulsion is perfect. It elicits the sense that I don't want to be processed, I don't want to be a pie. But Xtreme Scream's Pie Factory is a masterclass on how to build anticipation and fear and underpin the world that you are in whilst using scents alone. And for that, it is the winner of Best Use of Smell in a Maze 2022. This next category is a little bit of an awkward one, because I'm kind of in two minds whether or not to discuss the element itself. The category itself is the best out-of-box element, so a maze that does something that is truly unexpected. On the one hand, I wanted to tell you all about these great elements. On the other hand, since I feel that these won't be the last time you see these elements, I don't want to spoiler them. So, with that in mind, I will try and make this as spoiler-free as possible, whilst also shouting at that moment for those that have already experienced it. The best out-of-box element runner-up is Xtreme Scream's Ash Hell Penitentiary, The Floor. Again, I apologise, this is vague, I just want to make sure that those elements aren't ruined for people. The best out-of-box element winner again sees us at Xtreme Scream, and that is The Caravan at Uncle Enos's Open Acres. For those of you who have experienced The Caravan, what an off-the-wall, bonkers idea. For those of you who haven't, I don't really know what else to say. Again, as with all of these episodes, I always try and stress the best way to experience something, or to decide if you like it, is to go and experience it for yourself. With an out-of-the-box element, that is all the more true. Go in, open-minded, and let yourself be surprised. It's a lot of fun. Moving on from there, we have best sound design in an attraction. The runner-up for this category for me is the Haunted Express at Drayton Manor, as part of their Night at the Manor event. Night at the Manor is a brand new event, and you will in fact hear me talk about it a little bit more later on. The Haunted Express takes their usual train ride and adds a horror element. You are given a set of wireless headphones, and you are played a story as you go around the track itself. The sound design in this attraction is great. The acting is good. The sound design itself is very, very strong. There are multiple moments and multiple interactions with live actors alongside the train ride itself and alongside the recorded audio. And I think these come together in a very, very clever and inventive way. Honestly, the Haunted Express is probably one of the most interesting new attractions we've seen for some time. I think it's a really great use of the assets that Drayton Manor already had, and a really engaging and fun way to use those to their maximum potential. I have some other thoughts about Night at the Manor in general, and we'll come to those shortly, but understand that the Haunted Express from an audio perspective is incredibly strong. That's when with the fact that it's a fun and interesting story, and again, fun is paramount here. Bearing in mind this is a family park, and this is their first sort of step into a 14 plus event. But the Haunted Express remains fun with great audio design and is a fantastic attraction that the park can easily build a foundation upon in future years. The winner of Best Sound Design for 2022 goes to Arrival at Thorpe Park. I don't want to go into too much detail in terms of the story here because it is an audio experience and there isn't that live variance that you get with live actors. It would be a case of me effectively just ruining the experience or spoilering it. However, the premise is that you go into a cryopod and absolutely nothing could go wrong. You're going to go into cryosleep and you're going to awaken feeling happy and refreshed, knowing that you've travelled light years. Things surprisingly, do not go as planned. The arrival at Thorpe Park is created and designed by a company called Darkfield. If you are not familiar with Darkfield, what I would say is maybe don't pause the podcast, maybe finish this episode. But then when you finish this episode, go to Darkfield and find out when their streaming at home episodes are available. They are phenomenal. They use incredible 3D audio that is pinpoint accurate. There are moments across all of their attractions where you can swear that things are really there. And the arrival is no exception. There are moments where I felt myself grimace and wince. I felt uncomfortable due to the sounds that were so certainly in the room. And for that, the arrival and Darkfield take the top spot for Best Sound Design of 2022. The next category is Best Overall Visuals in a Maze. Teams of people spend countless hours ensuring that the sets and worlds that we enter into as participants in these scare mazes are real. They feel good, and that they suspend that disbelief long enough for us to get those scares. Visuals is an incredibly important part of a maze, and so now we look to celebrate some of the best visuals in a maze. The runner-up for Best Visuals in a Maze 2022 is Xtreme Scream's The Village. Xtreme Scream have got a lot of love over the space of these highlights and shout-outs. I don't want to call them awards, it still doesn't feel quite right. But The Village is utterly masterful in its visual design. You go through various different sets, ranging from people's homes, to an auto garage, to a science lab, to a school, right the way through to a fully realised church, of which none of the scenes feel lackluster or simply thrown together. Every single scene, every single set feels like it has been immaculately designed and realised. There are so many small little details and touches throughout every single room, from the fact that the homes have less uniformed items in them to make it feel like a real home, to the fact that the school is regimented and uniformed like an academic institution would be, to the fact that the science labs feel clinical and clean, right the way through to the grandiose and beautiful final scene in that church. Every single element is intentional, and it shows. This is equally true of our winner for Best Visuals in a Maze for 2022, which goes to Warsaw Scare Maze, The Scare House. What an absolute tour de force of eye-pleasing beauty. If it is meant to be inviting, it is inviting. If it is meant to feel grim, it feels grim. If you are meant to feel a sense of wonderment, you feel it. The visual design of this maze is absolutely world class. For those of you who haven't listened to the Warsaw Scare Maze episode, the Scare House sees you go through the home of a previous scare attraction owner and designer, and it sees you jump through multiple different stylistic rooms, from insane asylums to big top style circus set pieces to, again, a fully realised church. I can't want to stress this enough. Whether you are starting in the traditional feeling manner or ending in that beautiful, fully realised church, every single room is immaculate. If it is meant to feel dark and dirty, it will feel dark and dirty. If it is meant to feel bright, and again, there were moments of childlike wonder in that maze for me. The scene with the big top and the sort of gather round moment was grandeur and impressive, and I wasn't entirely sure how they've managed to fit some of the elements into the space they were working. The visual design, the use of perspective, the use of props, the use of decoration in there is absolutely world class, and that cannot be stated enough. Warsaw Scare Maze outdo themselves visually every single time, and the Scare House is absolutely no exception to that. So once again, the winner for Best Visuals in a Maze goes to Warsaw Scare Maze, The Scare House. The next category is Best Comedy / Laughs. Again, I know I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but I really do believe that laughter and fear are perfect bedfellows, and I think it takes a real skill to balance both. Our runner-up for Best Comedy / Laughs is Farmageddon. Every single individual working for Farmageddon is looking to cultivate a mixture of fear and laughter. The maze themselves are chocked full of little one-liners and jokes. The roamers are consistently funny and engaging, and it always feels like amongst the terror there is a pure sense of fun there. Our winner for Best Comedy goes to Dr. Frights' Halloween Nights. This is a company that are wholeheartedly focused on the idea of fun. Again, when speaking with some of the team there, fun is their number one goal. If a maze is scary, is almost secondary. And I really appreciate that, because don't get me wrong, they pack in scares, but Dr. Frights are constantly looking to make you smile and laugh. This is obvious in the Killer Clown mazes. This is obvious in the Grindhouse mazes. Again, if you haven't listened to the Dr. Frights episode, please go back and have a little listen to that. There were some moments where I was genuinely holding my sides in a maze, even through to the announcements that are made in the central hub. Everything about Dr. Frights is focused on laughter and smiling and a ridiculous nature that just cultivates this wonderful, fun feeling. And again, if you feel relaxed and you're having a laugh and you're enjoying yourself, you are all the more vulnerable to fear. You are all the more vulnerable for something to catch you off guard. And Dr. Frights understands that. So for me, the winner of Best Comedy, Best Humour, Best Laughs is Dr. Frights' Halloween Nights. The next two are very quick categories, but they're a soft spot for me. Again, like comedy, I believe there are certain things that I have a soft spot for and I like to highlight. So the next category is Best Clown Team. I love clowns. I really, really do. I love the sad clown paradigm. I love the crazy off-the-wall energy clowns. Give me clowns and give me them in ridiculous amounts. Some of the people who frequent scare mazes with me are probably a lot less keen on the idea of clowns. And I'm sure there's a few listeners at the moment who are saying, please, please don't give us more clowns. But I, for one, love them. So the runner-up for Best Clown Team goes to Trailers at Thorpe Park. These guys have some energy, constantly moving, constantly bouncing, so much kinetic energy. Just they are all like springs that are tightly wound and ready to bounce. There were moments in Trailers in the Bozo section where I wasn't entirely even sure where to look next. There was so much going on in that room, and they are relentless. Pure chaotic energy, as a clown should be. The winner for Best Clown Team actually goes back to Farmageddon. Their maze Contagion has some of the most varied uses of clowns in a clown maze that I've had the privilege of experiencing. From the bouncy, kinetic, high energy, big clown laughter troupe, right the way through to lumbering, heavy set, sad looking clowns, to people who are basically thugs but have embodied the clown paint but don't feel like true clowns. There is really so many different shades here inside one maze, and regardless of what version of a clown makes you feel a little uncomfortable, you'll find it. Once again, every single actor inside that maze, every single clown inside that maze was committed to delivering a great performance. And for me, that was one of the most enjoyable clown mazes I've ever done, with a fantastic set of actors in there willing to take it to the next level. So the Best Clown Team for 2022 was Farmageddon. Another mainstay of horror events and scare attractions is the Chainsaw Team. Now, I must confess, the first time I came up against a chainsaw in a scare maze, I stopped dead. Fear gripped me in a way that I could not bring myself to move my foot forward. So it has been an interesting journey for me since starting scare mazes, to go from fearing with an uncontrollable amount of dread to admiring a good chainsaw team. And as they are a mainstay for most scare attractions, I figured it's worth highlighting them. The runner-up for Best Chainsaw Team goes to Thorpe Park's Creek Freak Massacre, The Final Cut. I must confess, this was my first experience with Creek Freak Massacre in any way, shape or form. I didn't realise that I could learn to love and miss a set of actors so quickly, but I'm genuinely sad that the Buckwheats won't be there next year. You guys are crazy. I watched chainsaws being wielded on top of morgue slabs. I watched a man jump off of said table with a chainsaw. The chain link fence section of the maze is fast, it's visceral. There is an awful lot of energy in the buckwheats. That sawmill, they have honed their craft. They know how to handle a chainsaw. So from the first interaction right the way through to the last interaction in that maze, every single chainsaw actor inside Creek Freak Massacre was filled to the brim with energy, and it just makes it feel like blissful chaos. The runner-up for Best Chainsaw Team is Creek Freak Massacre at Thorpe Park. Incidentally, as a quick side note, if you were one of the buckwheats this year, thank you very much for an incredibly enjoyable experience. By far one of my favourite experiences of the year, and I hope that wherever the buckwheats end up, it's just as much fun and just as chaotic, because I don't believe we've seen the last of the buckwheats. They may not have a mill anymore, but buckwheats never die, right? I'm sure someone screamed that at me in the maze, so I can't wait to see where you guys end up next. However, the best chainsaw team goes to Burton's Screamfest, Creed Farm. For all the chaos and energy that Creek Freak Massacre brought, Creed Farm brought both chaotic energy and a genuine sinister edge. I have never been cornered and bullied in the way that I was at Creed Farm by a chainsaw user. Whilst doing the review for Creed Farm, I had somebody ask me, how uncomfortable are the chainsaws? And I had to respond, very, when they're between your legs. Creed Farm's chainsaw team are incredibly smart. They will not pick somebody who does not want to be interacted with. They will not bully you in terms of past the point of fun. However, if you are willing to engage, they will give you absolutely everything they have. And for that, Best Chainsaw Team goes to Screamfest, Creed Farm. Our next category is Best Alternative Experience. So an alternative experience is anything that isn't a scare zone or a scare maze. Runner-up, Terror Mountain, Night Stalker. Night Stalker is an incredibly fun single room experience. You find yourself in a room with a brutally murdered victim. An inspector or detective is trying to work out what happened. How did our now non-living friend meet their grisly end? With this being a show, I don't want to dive too far into specifics on the story, but I do again want to highlight the attraction itself. The actor inside the room that we had was incredibly passionate about delivering their lines and very convincing. With this being a majority story-based experience, this is paramount to ensuring that Night Stalker is delivered well. There's some great visual effects in there, and some great use of sound, and some great use of actor tricks as well. Again, I don't want to spoiler anything, so you'll have to forgive me for being vague. This is a really fun experience, and it sits very well within the world of scare attractions. As something a little bit different, Night Stalker delivers very, very well. It is a fun show, and given the correct actor on the correct night, can be a phenomenal experience. The winner for Best Alternative Experience sees us return back to Drayton Manor. The winner of Best Alternative Experience 2022 is The Haunted Express at Drayton Manor. I know I've already previously discussed the audio side of things when it comes to The Haunted Express, so we're not going to dive in too much on that again. However, we are just going to re-establish you are sat on a train, which is a normally operating train within the theme park. In addition to this, you are given a set of wireless headphones which tell you a story. That story is narrated and acted through the earphones. On top of that, again, you add in a mix of live actors. This is quite an intricate attraction, and for me there is a lot of incredibly inventive ideas here. It is consistent in terms of its pacing. It still allows you to have a sense of being in the world. Sometimes when you're on a mobile platform, be it a ride or a train or a vehicle of some sort, you can feel somewhat separate to the attraction. The Haunted Express never feels like that. You still feel very much like you're part of the world. And I think for the balancing of horror and fun that the Haunted Express brings, it's an incredibly engaging and interesting attraction, and certainly the strongest attraction that Night at the Manor had to offer. Certainly there are things that I would like to see adjusted. For example, the sides of the headphones do have blinking lights on them, which means the actors are also using them so they can keep their cues correctly, which means unfortunately sometimes you can see blinking lights. But again, this is a very minor thing. The attraction itself is fantastic, and that can be fixed with some black gaffer tape. So I'm certainly not going to hold that against it. And again, with this being the first year that Drayton Manor have looked to do something like this, I think the fact that they made such a big gamble on a new creative idea is really refreshing, and I think it's a really good sign for where that might go. So for its great use of audio, storytelling, and great interactions with a literal moving object, the best alternative experience goes to the Haunted Express at Drayton Manor. Whilst on the subject of Drayton Manor, the next category is One to Watch. One to Watch is about highlighting an event that I believe over the coming years will become incredibly strong. I have to think that Night at the Manor at Drayton Manor is that event. As it stands currently, there is somewhat of a disparagement between the quality of the Haunted Express and some of the other attractions. I have no insight to the backstage goings on or how the attractions themselves are designed. However, what I can't help but want to take away from my time there was one attraction which was unfortunately poor. There's no real way to dress it up. The Hunt for Zebediah was a bad attraction, and I say this in the honesty that I can. That's not to say the event was bad. Again, I've just put this in a highlights package for the One to Watch. I think they know there was a misstep there. The maze that was set inside the castle in the manor was a good starting point, but again, could be stronger, and I think this is very much about Drayton Manor finding their feet. The attraction that felt the most complete and most engaging and most interesting was the Haunted Express. What I would implore Drayton Manor to do is to take the time to find out why that attraction worked so well, what it was that made it so engaging, and to use that foundation to build off of for next year's event. Take the stories and the characters that we're introducing in the Haunted Express, have them permeate the park further. Have that team have a hand in doing the scare maze and the trail, because I think there's some obvious, clear, great creative design in that attraction. And I think Drayton Manor is such a beloved theme park here in the UK, in the Midlands. Chances are, if you're a Midlands child, you probably rode your first roller coaster at Drayton Manor. You probably have fond memories. And so I think there's a lot of people, myself included, that want to see that park do well. So you already have people who want to support that event. My number one bit of advice is give some of that creative control, or dwell on some of the ideas that made the Haunted Express so enjoyable, and have it spread out further from the park. Introduce more of the elements that make a scare attraction, so bring in some roamers, have it not just be the Vikings area, but most of all, add in the roamers, add a little bit more ambience in the park in general, and utilize the creatives that worked on the Haunted Express to work on further attractions. If that park can get themselves to 4 scare attractions, plus night rides, plus food, plus roamers, that could be an incredibly strong event. If the attention to detail that is there in that one attraction is spread across the park, and we see creative uses of audio and visual and good timings and all of the things that make that one attraction so strong in the wider park, we could be looking at an incredibly strong scare attraction. Don't be afraid to let people be afraid. Drayton Manor has a massive amount of support from the general population. It is a lot of people's soft spot park. Given the right creative decisions, Drayton Manor could be one of the top 5 events of the year, easily. And I think there's a wonderful thing that youth is on their side. There is so much scope for being inventive. So many parks, so many scare attractions are defined by their legacy now. Drayton Manor is in a wonderful position that they've had 1 year, and they've got one good attraction there that's really knocked out of the park. So now, while it's still young and influence can still be made and changes can still be made, innovate and push that throughout the park and I genuinely believe that 2023 will be a fantastic year for Night at the Manor. Our next category is Best Event. Now, Best Event has been split into theme parks and non-theme parks, as again, I don't think it's fair to benchmark an independent or a smaller event against something that's got a multi-million pound backing. With the Best Theme Park event being quite a shallow pool, there's actually only going to be a winner here rather than a runner-up and a winner. That being said, I will state why one of the parks for me didn't take that top spot. Alton Towers for me missed the mark this year by not having any roamers and not having any further Halloween event really outside of the main stage, Towers Street, and the mazes themselves. I felt like there was so much that they could have done with this. Next year, for me, Scarefest really needs to bring in roaming actors again. It needs to bring in scare zones. Alton Towers' grounds are such a gorgeous and natural fit to eerie and creepy storytelling. The park know this. We have a family coaster that is focused on sacrificing people to the Wicker Man. We have a family coaster which is about wraiths taking over excavation site and accidentally disturbing a crypt. We have a Vekoma Madhouse that is focused around a curse of the old oak tree and a vault sealed for 2 centuries. There are a lot of attractions that are focused around horror and the natural creepiness of the grounds. Don't get me wrong, you light the grounds in glorious summer sunshine and it is just beautiful. However, those October nights when they start to creep in, Alton Towers is such a natural fit for horror, for eeriness, and the fact that those spaces aren't being utilised is criminal. So, as I said, that's my little side note as to why perhaps Alton Towers didn't take this spot, which leaves us by default almost. The best event from a theme park this year was Fright Nights at Thorpe Park. Fright Nights at Thorpe Park is consistently regarded as one of the most reliable and big ticket scare events of the UK calendar. This being the 21st year of Fright Nights. The entertainment was fantastic. The roamers were great. The stage shows were of a great standard. There were genuinely moments of humour. The Legacy Laser and Fire show was fantastic and a real nice way to cap off an evening before you leave the park. Night rides are obviously great for those that enjoy roller coasters. The scare zones were great. In fact, at the beginning of this episode, the first 2 things we highlighted were from this event being Death's Doors and the Crows of Merkin Meadow. You then throw in the audio experience from Darkfield, which is good. I don't believe it should have replaced a maze, but it is good. Creek Freak Massacre, the final cut, the returning trailers, which is a stunning maze, and a brand new for 2022 survival games, which is one of the most visceral mazes I've ever had the joy of doing. And that really does put Fright Nights in a fantastic position. So once again, the best event at a theme park for 2022 goes to Thorpe Park Fright Nights. Moving on to the best event for a non-theme park. In third place, we have Farmageddon. Its incredible use of roamers, great mazes, interesting alternative experience in Zombie Apocalypse, which is a zombie paintballing experience, consistent and solid mazes throughout, which cover a variety of themes, puts this as, for my money, one of the best scare events in the UK. The runner-up, this is a real tough one for me because 2 and 1 could go either way, and I'm trying to be more objective and think about wider appeal. So my favourite here, and the order may not even really be the same. So my runner-up, given the wider context that it's for the majority, is Dr. Fright's Halloween Nights. Dr. Fright's Halloween Nights is easily one of the most enjoyable nights out you will have. The mazes are fantastic. The DIY go-get-'em attitude is infectious. The mazes themselves are good. Like, they're great, in fact. The only reason that I cannot necessarily put this at number 1 is that the attitude of it being more fun focused, ironically, may not work for everybody. Dr. Frights is your favourite band. It doesn't mean it's everybody's favourite band. But for those that enjoy Dr. Frights, this will be their highlight of the year in, year out. And for me, I dare say it was my highlight of the year, and I dare say it will be the highlight of my year next year. I absolutely cannot wait to see what Dr. Frights do in 2023. And as I say, it was a real tough quandary for me as to if I put Dr. Frights in at number 1 or if I put this event in at number 1. So your winner for best event at a non-theme park goes to Xtreme Scream. Xtreme Scream has it all. A great hub area that cultivates conversation and fun and laughter. A good selection of food and drink. A place to warm up on a cold evening. Great mazes throughout with attention to visuals, to audio, to experience, to smells. Every sensory element that needs to be considered is considered. Out of the scare attractions that we at the Speak Uneasy experienced this year, for my money, Xtreme Scream is the best all-round scare attraction available in the UK currently. And once again, there are so many events out there, and we certainly did not experience all of them this year. We're looking to expand what events we experience next year, but we're pretty sure that Xtreme Scream will be up there again next year. Their attention to detail in every single aspect of the event just makes this an incredibly strong event. And as I said, my first and second places could easily switch, but I think given the wider context of what most people will enjoy if they're going to a scare event, I think this aligns more with most people's expectations of a scare event. But for those that fall in love with Dr. Frights and like the stylistic choices that Dr. Frights have made, that will be their favourite. Again, it's so slim between first and second. But as it stands, the winner of Best Non-Theme Park Event 2022 is Xtreme Scream. Up next we have the Best Multi-Zone Maze. We didn't want to include these against an attraction as a whole, but we also didn't want to include them against a single style maze. We felt that it was a little bit unfair whichever way we did it. So our runner-up for Best Multi-Zone Maze for this year was Warsaw Scare Maze. As I said before, Warsaw Scare Maze is meticulous in its planning and its execution is flawless. It's simply put one of the most staggering attractions that you can experience in the United Kingdom. The level of anticipation, tension, and payoff in scares is phenomenal. You will laugh, you will scream, and you will want to come back. Warsaw Scare Maze, the Scare House, was a fantastic attraction, and I absolutely can't wait to see what Warsaw Scare Maze do this Christmas at Chris Massacre and next year. However, the winner for Best Multi-Zone Maze is Stourbridge Scare Maze. Now, as with the Best Event category, this will very much depend on what it is that you're looking for on the given evening. I would say that Warsaw Scare Maze, their idea of set pieces and their level of production is higher. Whereas Stourbridge, the actors were more energetic, they were more focused on getting in and getting those scares, and I think it very much comes down to what the individual is looking for. All I know is that I did 2 run-throughs of Stourbridge Scare Maze, both of which were incredibly energetic. The sets were gorgeous, the actors wanted to be there and wanted to do the best job they could. And sure, it lacked maybe the grandeur of the set pieces of Warsaw Scare Maze, but in terms of visceral fun, for me, on that evening, Stourbridge was the slightly stronger maze, and I can't help but again say it's so slight. We are so fortunate here in the Midlands that we have Warsaw and Stourbridge so close to us, and we are so fortunate to have 2 scare attractions of this caliber so close. And I think the fact that this one took me longer than most of the decisions that I made this year is a testament to how great both of these attractions really are. So again, your winner of Best Multi-Zone Maze is Stourbridge Scare Maze. We're finally going to end on the top 3 mazes. I really struggle to make this a top 2 if I'm honest. And again, mazes are an interesting thing. Given the right run through on the right day, any of these mazes could take the top spot. In at number 3, Thorpe Park's Creek Freak Massacre, the final cut. As you've already heard me discuss this maze previous in the episode, I'll keep this nice and brief. But if for some reason you were making a coffee and you missed that section, Creek Freak Massacre is an insanely visceral, hillbilly-based maze with tons of chainsaws, very, very kinetic, very loud, very visceral, very fast, and quite an intense maze as well. And I was very fortunate that I got to do a duo run-through on that. So every single member of the Buckwheat family were very, very focused on quite a small batch. I also got to do it as part of a larger batch as well. And again, both times, chaotic, intense, fun run-throughs, and it's that level of consistency that also elevates this maze. In at number 2, we have Xtreme Scream's The Village. Again, this maze was discussed earlier in the episode, but that great visual design, the great use of sound and smells, all of the things that made Xtreme Scream such an incredibly strong event are embodied in the village. You twin all of the things that make a great scare maze, and then you put the cherry on the top of what is a jaw-dropping finale. Again, one that I do not wish to spoiler, but it is one of the only finales that as I stepped into the room, I stopped for a second to take in exactly what I was about to walk through. And finally, my number 1 maze for the 2022 Halloween season goes to Alton Towers Resort's Darkest Depths. This for me is just a wonderful maze. The pre-show is beautifully delivered with great dialogue. The sense of scale and claustrophobia and the spaces in there are really well done. As we mentioned in Best Smells in a Maze, the smell pods in there are so strong and underpin what is already an interesting and engaging story. I have a massive soft spot for pirates. That certainly influences it. Every single turn and twist in that maze has this real foreboding sense in it. And I think for the mixture of tension and the sense of awe that I get when I go into that maze, it feels like I really am on a galleon. It feels like I really am in the bowels of a pirate ship, and that never ceases to amaze me. So given how great that sense of wonder is, great visuals, the strong performances, and for the fact that 2022's Darkest Depths team have been working their backsides off, it just felt like there was never any downtime in those mazes. That for me makes Darkest Depths the number 1 maze for 2022. And that kind of concludes our roundup of the Halloween 2022 season. Firstly, if you've managed to stick it out this long, thanks, I really appreciate it. This is a much longer episode than I originally intended, but I guess when there's so many great attractions and so many great elements to discuss, it was going to go longer than I expected. Again, the views and opinions expressed here are just views and opinions, and as always, my words are not gospel. If any of the attractions or events that I've mentioned today have piqued your interest, please feel free to get out there and enjoy them yourselves. Try them. Tell me why I'm wrong. I'm more than happy to listen as long as you guys are enjoying yourselves. We really look forward to finding out what 2023 brings for all of these events and attractions, to see what mazes return, and to see what new mazes take their places for mazes that will no longer be with us. We'll do our best, obviously, as 2023 approaches, to continue to cover all of the great scare attractions and experiences that there are to offer out there. Just a little heads up, and also kind of a thank you. For those of you who've listened to multiple episodes, you'll realise this isn't typically how my voice sounds. I have been suffering quite badly with a cold, but I didn't want to leave this episode too long, as we are starting to approach the middle of November, and I felt since this was a review of the Halloween season, I really should get it out somewhat close to Halloween. Once the last of this throatiness has passed, I will be doing a review of Electric Goldfish's Keep the Candle Burning. I'm very, very much looking forward to this. This is an immersive audio experience that you can do in your own home. So I will be turning off the lights, grabbing a candle, putting in my headphones, and giving you my thoughts on that. I'm hugely excited about this. I'm hearing nothing but good things about Electric Goldfish. So I'm hugely excited to get my hands on that. We'll also have a review of the live theatre performance of Let the Right One In. And there's a few other little bits and pieces that I don't necessarily want to give away just yet. But if you are enjoying the Speak Uneasy just know there is more content coming, even outside of quote-unquote spooky season. Incidentally, if you are enjoying the Speak Uneasy, thank you very much again for listening. Please take the time to like and subscribe on the platforms that you're listening to it on. Feel free to tell some friends, because especially at this early stage, it makes a massive difference. If you tell 2 people and they tell 2 people and so on and so forth, we can get a great community of listeners here. If you've enjoyed the podcast but you think there are things I can improve outside of maybe buying some Lemsip, of course there are other cold and flu products available, then feel free to email thespeakuneasypod@aol.com to give us any thoughts and feedback. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and as always, take care and stay scared.